Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we have to talk about a heartbreaker. So this is one of the toughest losses I think I've ever seen in sports. It's historic. I forget what the thing is, but it's something like when a team is up like 26-0 with like 10 minutes left.
13,400 to 0 or something.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous. But I really thought about it, and the closest parallel I could think of, and you and I have talked about this because we were together when it happened, but we didn't have a show yet. You know where I'm going with this?
What's his name? With Philly.
Yeah, the 2010 game against Philly. I think it was like week 15, where Matt Dodge punted to Deshaun Jackson. But really, the parallel is in how the Giants were winning something like 28-0 in that game into the fourth quarter, and they just battled back and got us to the point where it was down to one last play, and they had to punt, and instead of just punting it out of bounds and going into overtime, Matt Dodge punted it directly at Deshaun Jackson and was returned for a touchdown, and we were miserable.
We were at a family Christmas party, and I literally had to go out and walk around the block because I didn't want to be around family members. That's how bad it was.
So I've always wondered what our show would have sounded like after that. And it's that's not a perfect parallel, right? Because it was a historic moment in NFL history. It's the first time
it was
in
a moment.
13 million.
I think the difference was that was just one incredibly stupid play with the worst possible result. This was...
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, it was the defense completely gave up in that game, and they let them crawl back into it. That's right, what was frustrating.
As simple as like you said, you punt it out of bounds, go to overtime.
But I think that is
remembered today for that.
But it should be, and I think that's the funny parallel is that I think that it's people look back at that game and they're just like, well, Matt Dodge, and they blame this poor kid who was like a 7th round draft pick that year. That was I don't want to spend too much time on a history lesson here, but Jeff Fiegels just was a 41-year-old punter, I think, that year, if I'm remembering that right. And just abruptly announced his retirement in like March. So now they have no offseason plan. And again, like you can get a punter like around the league for pretty cheap. But in the Giants' infinite wisdom, they put all their eggs in the basket of they scouted punters for the draft. They found one with the biggest leg. I'm sure there were other reasons why they took him, but they took him in the 7th round and they just rolled with it. And it was a problem that whole year. I remember he was fumbling snaps. It was just a mess. It was a special teams.
He threw him a 60-yarder and he shanked one. It like the worst time. Yeah.
I remember there was a game against Chicago earlier that year where they had something like 8 sacks on Jay Cutler in like the first half. They were just destroying him. But the game was close because I'm pretty sure Matt Dodge took a snap and just dropped it. He was like a mess the whole year.
He pulled the Landetta is what he did.
Yeah. And people go back and they analyze that game in the singular moment of how could you punt it right to Deshaun Jackson? How could you do this? But they forget that game was in the bag and they took their foot entirely off the gas.
Well, I was also thinking about, I think it was 1996, that home playoff game against Minnesota where we just shit the bed in the second half. I mean, I actually just thought about it on the fly now. I have to go back with the numbers, but we were up 17 points, 18 points at home, and it was a complete turnaround in the second half. And that's what this game kind of felt like, but just on a far, obviously that was more important as a playoff game, but just how everything can possibly go wrong from a physical and a mental standpoint did. I mean, you couldn't, if you read the play chart for the fourth quarter, you wouldn't believe it. You thought it was like bad fiction or something.
I'll have to look it up. I don't think 1996 is the correct year. Maybe 95, and the playoff game was in January of 96 or something.
Yeah, it was around there. I was definitely living in Florida. I can tell you that. I was Big Apple Sports Cafe, rest in peace, in Dunedin, Florida, watching it there with the Giant Club. I remember it. It might be 95, 96, right in that range.
Not sure. Well, I'll try and look it up while we're talking and stuff.
Yeah,
But so deflation. Just feel absolute deflation. And I don't know about you, because we were not together, but I could feel at a certain point, like with like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I just sat here shaking my head like they're gonna lose this game. They have found a way to lose this game.
And you know why I felt that, Grump? Because we saw signs of this happening already this season.
Yeah.
Games we had no business losing, we lost. Maybe not the exact same script with this, but just kind of like pulling defeat from jaws of victory. The Dallas game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like no business losing a game like that. And then it starts getting into your bloodstream, things like that. And yeah, I'm with you. I knew you were pissed because I texted you about 3 or 4 times. You never answered, and you always do. So I was like, oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, it is a lot, watching intently and like taking the charting notes, but I usually find time to, but then once it got to a certain point, I was like, oh my God, like this is just, I started getting a headache. I was getting like so mad.
Yeah.
But we can get into it. Let's start one thing at a time. The number one thing. So just like that Matt Dodge game, the easiest thing to point the finger at and why this game was lost, and it's not a reason, but I think it's just that it's only one reason, is the kicking situation, right? And I can't really blame Jude McAtamney for not being very good. He just based on his roster, his pathway to the roster, it's not his fault. They did the right thing using an international pathway program roster spot for him. It's made to develop players, and I had advocated for bringing him in, but only at a certain point, right? And it was like, that was like, if you're not going to do anything else, then do this kind of situation. But this goes back to, we've been pissed off about this since last year.
Since last year's, the Washington game last year.
And
didn't he miss an extra point last week too against Philly?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody remembers because the game was a big party, but he missed an extra point in that game too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that already should give you, warning bells that and to the point we've been making over and over, special teams are just not a priority.
Yeah, it's not even that it's not a priority. It's just that everything is Band-Aids. It's almost like it doesn't matter. It's so bizarre because you don't care, but you cared enough to spend all this money on a kicker. Like, there's money on the table to walk away from this kicker, but it's just like, it's fine. We got this. He'll be fine. Like, this is the big difference in why it's like, what happened between a regime that everyone was happy about in 2022 and now. And I think that the biggest thing is that they didn't stick true to what they were in 2022. I think they walked into what they perceived as an absolute mess of a roster and an absolute mess of a cap situation. And they were like, you know what? Nobody's safe. We're gutting this stuff. We're making it our own. And the moment that it started to work, they just abandoned that philosophy. They stopped being aggressive with the bottom of the roster and trying to find every last guy that they could squeeze talent out of for minimal money. They went big game hunting on some stuff. They banked way too much on their draft picks being successes when, I can't really... I can go through and tell you that they're probably a worse than average regime in terms of drafting. But if you go around the league, like, it's not so clear cut and dry. Like, you go around the league, like Bill Belichick was a terrible drafter in New England. Sure. It's just that he very infrequently was relying on his draft picks to do everything. This regime, that's just not the case. You know what I mean? Like,
they were very smart with jettisoning guys before they got too expensive. They were like, we'll get someone else. They may not have good drafters, but good talent evaluators and had an impeccable sense of timing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, they abandoned that philosophy. They stopped being aggressive and hypercritical of the roster. I don't think that Dable was as hard on his players after that. Darius Slayton having to fight tooth and nail and claw his way to a roster spot in 2022 and a function on the offense really speaks to what he thought of him for no reason at all, because it can't be a talent thing. Like, not saying, we can have the endless Darius Slayton conversation.
Don't need to
But
have it right now. But
at
your
the
point's well
time,
made.
at the
Mhm.
time, there's no question that he was one of the better receivers on the roster. Um,
Right.
and now it's like they're not hard on them in training camp. Guys get to take things off all the time, and the biggest thing is that mistakes just go unpunished. You know, it's a failure all over the place, and I can't really blame the kicker himself for being put in a situation that he shouldn't be in. Of course, he's an NFL kicker in some regard. He's got to make kicks. He's got to make extra points. You know, you missed one last week. I would be kicking every moment I could after that to never do it again. And I'm not
Maybe
saying
you
that,
just are where
whatever.
you are. Maybe you're just a fringy kicker and you've been put in an impossible situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean,
And it's
allegedly he beat Younghoe Koo in a straight up competition, and it's hard for me to argue that he didn't. You know what I mean? I can't imagine that Joe
Grump, here's
Shane.
my thing about that.
Yeah.
It's not like they're playing soccer where they have to take 4 days off after playing a match. It's not like you're playing an NFL game on Sunday and you have to rest for a week before the next game. A kicking competition should literally happen every single practice.
Oh well, every single practice, absolutely.
I mean, not just if you want a competition, that it should be a constant competition. And kick,
yeah,
kick.
yeah, I agree. I mean, but again, we're not there to know what did or didn't happen. But I find it hard to believe. Well, I mean, I find it hard to believe that Jude McAtamy didn't win the kicking competition, whether it goes on every day in practice or not. I'm sure they keep a tally of what they make and what they don't make, and that they're just going with him because, well, you know, they're the ones who put him on the roster. It just doesn't make any sense.
It sounds like a hubris thing. Like, I'm going to make it work with this guy. He's an international guy.
No,
we're going to show you guys that we were able to get a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, that seems ridiculous to me. I can't imagine that, especially given what's already happened. I think what's more likely is two other scenarios. One, he's a better player in practice than he is not. And or in that same category that maybe Younghoe Koo is not as good as we think. He could be suffering from yips based on what's going on. And you know, or apathy. He won the competition, no more competition, just kick, and we're just rolling with what we got.
I mean, a lot of circumstantial evidence or everything else they think about special teams, that seems likely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's plenty of evidence to say that they just don't take it as seriously as they should in some regard. You know, I think to give a little bit of credit where it's due, I do think that they are utilizing the new kickoff rules to put returners in a bind. I think that they're really trying to get the ball to land around the 1 or 2 yard line and have them figure out exactly what they feel like doing, if they want to run it out or run it in or whatever. And I think it's working to good success because I think their kickoff coverage has been pretty phenomenal this year. So
it's very important. It's an important part of the game right now because we're seeing, these short fields with these, longer field goals and everything that if they're starting the 35, 40 yard line, it's 2 first downs and guys are getting 3 points.
Yeah, and
besides us, of course.
I wanna give credit where it's due because I do think that's important, and I think that giving teams the opportunity to get 3 first downs and be in field goal range is just a bad. I think that's just the league sucking, but whatever, it is what it is. But the most important special teams thing has to be where you score points.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like all of special teams important. You gotta be able to punt cleanly, but I mean they have a good punter. Jamie Gillen has been nothing but great.
Yeah.
How are you going to possibly not give a shit about the guy who puts points on the board?
You don't win games by punching into good field position. You win games by scoring points, however you get points.
Yeah, I mean, there are, I know that I'm like the only person on earth that seems to care about this shit, but like, there are very cheap kickers you can sign out of the spring league. Jake Bates, 66. Brandon Aubrey is probably the consensus best kicker in the league, was a spring football kicker. Rodrigo Blankenship is still out there, has NFL experience, has been good. There are I'm only saying it because these options are cheap as hell, and they shouldn't even be made now. Now we've passed the point of no return. We're in a situation where, go ahead, bring Rodrigo Blankenship in, but at this point you're spending even more money on a kicker. You spent money on Graham Gano. You didn't take advantage of the out in his contract. You spent money on Younghoe Koo now. You spent money activating Jude McAtamy, although that's kind of negligible amounts of money. Now you're going to spend money on another kicker coming in. This is too late. Like, now you're just throwing money away. This should have been done in the summer. You should have had a competition. First of all, you should have just cut Graham Gano straight away. And your competition should have been in the summer, and you find out who your kicker is then.
Last year, we did this. Top 5 concerns, top 5 surprise moves, and I was on that drum. I think they're going to cut Gano. I think he's at risk. I think we need to maybe invest in like a late round draft pick on a kicker if they really like somebody. So me and you were on this very early last year too, that they need to be prepared for this situation.
There were not too many contracts you could look at this season and be like, this is where they can save money. The 2 biggest ones were probably, if memory serves, were Rakeem Nunez-Roches, who I think they tried to get themselves in that situation, and no one really ran away with the defensive tackle 2 job, and they ended up keeping him around, and Graham Gano. It was the easiest thing to be like, there are kickers everywhere. They can be had for cheap. This guy costs way too much money. This is built into his contract for him to be cut at this time. If you don't believe in him, he's now old. He is now hurt, and he was falling apart. He was not as good last year as he was the year before or the year before that. I mean, you had the trifecta of reasons to get rid of him.
I think this is getting us into our bigger point of all of this, because we can sit and bitch about this game and yell and do. You know, I unfortunately was in the car this morning and put the fan on for 5 minutes, and I don't.
Oops.
Those takes, go listen to the fan for that. So I think this is a bigger picture. You know, when you don't have as much talent as other teams around the league, you have to do things along the margins and the extra 3% to compete and be better than. And it's things like this that we do not do and puts us behind the 8 ball. And we have now seen almost 4 years of the same things over and over, where we need regime change. It's not going to happen with this group. Not going to happen with Shane. Not going to happen with Dable. Not going to happen with the defensive coordinator of the week that he has in. It's not, because we are pissing in the wind every week. We have an overachieving team right now. We were lumped right in with the Carolinas and the Jets as the worst team in the league, and the play you're seeing on the field, the development of guys like Jackson Dart, guys like Scatterboot, the offensive line, Cordell Flott, all these things are happening that are ahead of schedule on the field, which is kind of being negated by the system, being negated by the process. And it's the lack of attention to detail, the lack of discipline, the lack of, making sure all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And right now, it doesn't matter as much in the big picture because we're not really a playoff team and we're not going to be one. But what happens when this roster keeps getting better? And now we're is coaching decisions going to make the difference, or a roster fuck up make the difference between making the playoffs, not making the playoffs? Is it going to prevent us from having home field versus being a wild card? Is it going to prevent us from being in the Super Bowl versus conference championship? Is it going to prevent us from winning a Super Bowl? And I have completely lost confidence in this whole group, that I don't think they have the capability, the capacity to do that. So that's why I'm out with them. And it's not because of this one particular game, not because of the Dallas game. We're in year 4. We're in year 4, guys. And there's no defense attorney is going to go up in front of a judge and say, here's my case why I have confidence that this coaching staff, this general manager, all of this support staff can take this team to levels above, okay, quarterbacks are being developed, young talent and everything, but I don't see it. And that's where I am. I'm ready to move on. I wouldn't do it right now, but in 2026, we need to start over.
Yeah, and I think start over is kind of the wrong phrase because it sounds like step back. But I think
I don't mean roster rebuild.
No,
I
I know,
think some of the
I know
people,
what you're saying. I
yeah,
know what you're saying.
yeah.
The problem here is that, like, well, I don't think it's a problem. I think the distinction that needs to be made is that when you have a team that is overachieving and that you have young talent that is producing and surprising, right? So, like, at this point now, after this game, after Philly, after I think you can lump New
San
Orleans in
Diego,
there, but
but
you
Chargers.
yeah, but the Chargers game, right?
Hmm.
You look at all of that, and I would even say to some extent too, you can lump in the Dallas game. I think that it's important to say that it's no longer a fluke, right? Like, this team over 4 years, they've put together a roster that is talented enough to be competitive with the right guy at the helm. Putting Jackson Dart at the helm, like, the acquisition of Malik Neighbors is a game-changing talent. They went out and they got him when, there were people asking for or advocating for other players at that time. I think Abdul Carter, even though the counting stats, if you will, have not really shown it yet, his impact on the game is unbelievable. The acquisition of Brian Burns is an outstanding acquisition that you can absolutely point to counting stats. I think that, getting ahead on extending the contracts of Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence kept them under the cap in ways where they're not paying the market price for the talent that they have. And what they needed was the right push to push them over the top. And Jackson Dart, especially with the coupling of Cam Scatterbo, I think there's something intangible right there with the relationship of the two of them, that they feed off of each other. And I hate talking about non-football shit like moxie and energy and vibes and shit. But I do think that there's an energy feeding system between the two of them, that they, from the moment they met, they just clicked right. They're the same minded, competitive, physical kinds of players that bring out the best in each other. You know what I mean? And I'm not really even necessarily giving the roster management people credit for that. I think that might just be lucky. But they have built a team that now has been pushed over the edge. I don't think it's a fluke what's happened the last couple weeks, including even the Saints game, right?
Let me ask you a question, Grump, before you keep going. If you just came to planet Earth from Venus or Uranus, wherever, and you didn't know what the New York Giants were in the last 10 years or 15 years, and you watched this team for 7 games, what do you think of this team?
I would think, well, I mean, it would seem, well, I don't know. I mean, you add in the quarterback switch is kind of the weird wrench in that story, but it seems like they're finding ways to lose when they should be winning. I would think that this was a better team that has not been the dredges of the NFL that's just fucking up.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and losers lose. Yeah.
A little bit of losers lose, but I think my point is that just because that they have done this doesn't mean that they should deserve to stay. It's taken them a long time. I think that other coaches can coach this team and coach them better, get more out of them. But I mean, what I'm saying is it's not a mutually exclusive relationship. And they've kind of matriculated this process in like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of end result. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot more nuanced than that. But they've done enough to hurt and hinder things to pull back the things that they've done correctly. They've hit majorly on some things, and then they've fucked up so much that it pulls them back every single year. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So they are making progress, but so glacially, and the 1 step backward is entirely self-imposed. Entirely. And some of them are forgivable mistakes, right? You get kind of in a really, really tough situation where your first year you have to choose between Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, and you're trying to do both, legitimately trying to get Barkley inked before the season's over so that you can get both of them done, and it doesn't work out, and you end up swinging at the wrong pitch, right? It happens. Yeah. But it's nevertheless a step backwards.
I think it's more, my issues with this whole thing is more at the tactical game level than roster level. I mean, all those things are true. This team there was a lot to do in the last couple of years. They have, 22 man, like, starting 11s on each side are decent enough. This team is obviously doesn't have the depth to overcome that. That's fine. But to me, it's just like the infrastructure in place in a game by game basis. It seems like the players are fighting, not literally, but fighting the direction and the coaching and the tactical deployment by the coaches that I just don't ever see getting better.
They're
It's not
swimming
getting
upstream.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the players are out there swimming upstream.
I mean, this team is improved because they've over the last couple of years because they have better talent. Jackson Dart, for all we can say about Dable doing a great job of developing him, he is a better talent than all the backups we had in the last couple of years and a non-healthy Daniel Jones. And by the way, Grump, I'm going to rename him for now on Healthy Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Because I can't take this anymore. The Giants fucked up everything. We had unhealthy Daniel Jones. This is Daniel Jones, healthy Daniel Jones. So this team is better as a result of the talent being better, not because of the X's and O's and how they're executing in games. And that, to me, is not something that's going to be solved by this coaching staff.
So to keep this a little bit into the context of this game, and then we'll bring it right back out again because you're right on the point. I think that Jackson Dart played a pretty phenomenal game in this game. So going up against the number one defense in the league, I think, if not number one, they were within the top three without Malik Neighbors. You know what I mean? And
Right.
we'll get to the depth on this team in a little bit, but without Malik Neighbors, and to, Broncos fans thought that the Giants fans were delusional, down to the players, thought that Giants fans were delusional for thinking that this could be a close game or that the Giants have a shot. For 3/4 of this game, I think Broncos fans were starting to think about apple picking and doing anything else with their Sunday.
There was a lot of boos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And pretty early on, there were a lot of boos.
You look up the tweets of the beat writers for a while, and they call it embarrassing, horrendous, about as bad as it gets.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong. It was a pathetic showing on the field for Denver for 3/4. And I thought that Jackson Dart played a pretty phenomenal game, remembering again that this is his 4th NFL start. A guy that did not go 1 overall or even top 5 or even top 10.
And
you know what I
pound
mean?
for pound might be the hardest place to play, especially for a rookie. A, super loud crowd. B, altitude. C, very tough defense.
Yeah.
He's not going to have situations as tough for this potentially in the rest of his career.
How about D, college level wide receiver group?
Yeah, yeah.
He ended up 15 of 33 for 283 yards. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't think he threw for 3 touchdowns. I think he threw for 2 and ran 1 in.
Yeah, that's correct.
And maybe. No, he threw 3. He threw 1 to Cam Scattaboo. He threw 1 to Daniel Bellinger, and he threw 1 that bounced off of Wan'Dale's hands into Theo Johnson's hands, and then he ran 1 in on 5 rushes for 11 yards. So I thought that he played great. The 1 interception is kind of the black mark, and it's a perfectly valid black mark. He's trying to do too much in that scenario, trying to force a ball to an open receiver when his feet aren't set. He's got people diving around his ankles. Just needs to either, see that a little bit sooner and get rid of it, or just learn to eat it. You know what I mean? And it's tough to eat it in that moment.
Play immediately, and those are sometimes the worst you're going to get.
Absolutely. And I am perfectly comfortable with the performance that Jackson Dart put out on that field. More than perfectly comfortable. I mean, this pass rush was completely blanked. Not off the stat sheet, but they were not a formidable pass rush. He was able to step up in the pocket. And it's, the tackles are going to get a lot of credit and they deserve it, but his ability to understand his pocket timing and pocket manipulation absolutely boosts the level of the offensive line play.
If you had a quarterback who had the mobility of Eli Manning, for example, I'm not saying, the experience on stuff, but if you had Eli Manning in that situation in game 4, he would have crumbled, around it. Jackson Dart has the ability to step up in the pocket, move around, create something out of nothing. That is very critical in this league right now.
Yeah, and I think that ability gets sometimes the way it's described by talking heads and whatever is a little bit reductive, where it's just like he scrambles. It's like it's way more than that. He has excellent timing in the pocket. He has excellent pocket feel. He knows how to manipulate it. He keeps his eyes downfield, and then on top of it does the extra thing where like he can run forward, pump fake guys so that they're running the wrong way, and then throw the other direction. So I mean, and then you add in the other level of like, yeah, he can also just run too. So you have to worry about him just taking off. So he does a lot of things that are more than just like, oh, Jaden Daniels is really fast. You know what I mean? Or he's slippery. It's way more than that. I'm not saying he's better than Jaden Daniels. I'm just saying like these kind of sometimes his ability to move in the pocket and be mobile or whatever, I think, is reducing what he's actually doing back there. So I think he elevates the play of the line. I thought he had an excellent game. I think that other guys stepped up pretty big too. I thought that Daniel Bellinger, even though he had his first drop in like 2 years in this game, 3 catches for 88 yards, slipped absolutely deep behind the lines on one play for a touchdown.
Gary, for sure.
Wan'Dale Robinson, ended 6 for 12. With one drop that became a catch to Theo Johnson. But, for a guy who gets a ton of criticism, mainly due to his size, and I think also partially due to what his role in the offense was reduced to in the last couple of years with the quarterback play that they had, the offensive line play they had in the years past. I think that we're finally seeing what Wan'Dale can be. And you saw him at Kentucky just run all over the place. So I'm running against us. Yeah, but he ended with 95 yards. He was a huge player in this game. And for me, with Wan'Dale, the number one thing that he's always been great at, the 2 things that he's always been good at has been making at least one guy miss, despite his size, is able to shed tacklers, not with speed and quickness entirely, but his ability to bounce off of guys and stay upright and move the chains. He's just like you need 12 yards, he gets you 12 yards or 13 yards every time.
I think out of necessity, they're having to utilize him more than just a check down guy. And I think he stepped up to the challenge. So when we talk about next year, when Malik Neighbors is back, we get another receiver through trade or draft or whatever. He is a perfect complementary piece to the core to have like a really potentially good wide receiver room.
I mean, they would have to re-sign him, so this is a contract year. So
that's
I'm happy with what Cam Scadaboo did in this game. Ended with 60 yards on 16 touches, but this was going to be a very difficult uphill sledding run game, and he showed himself in the pass game as well with I think like a 15-yard screen pass that he took to the house.
Here's going to be my Scottaboo take, and this is not a knock on him, the person, or the player, rather, but to me, Cam Scottaboo's greatest value on this team is going to be this team has a 6-point lead with 5.5 minutes left. I need that son of a bitch to be a battering ram and get first down. The last we before the show we went through like the play drives, the last couple of drives and everything. And I think the last drive he had like a 1-yard run, a 2-yard run. And granted, the whole universe knew we were going to run, but I want to see him become that guy that when we have a lead to protect, he's the guy who's going to run the clock out for us and just 4 yards. They can't stop him. I think he's got the physical ability to do it. Maybe it's the way he's utilized throughout the game. We have other running backs too, so you'd have to have as heavy a workload in the beginning of a game. But his greatest value, I think, is going to be that guy who's the closer. He's going to be our Mariano Rivera on this team.
Yeah, and I think that he'll get there. Remember, this was going to be an uphill battle running the ball this game.
That's why I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying it just kind of this really crystallized. Like, oh, that's where it's great for Scotty to run over a guy in the first quarter and get the crowd pumped up early in the game, but this guy is going to be, really remembered if that he becomes that guy who just ices a game for us. And I hope that as this offense kind of evolves, as Jackson Dart becomes more mature and more understanding of what needs to get done, that's the role he's going to get.
I think that the coaching staff is still also learning all the things that he can do. This is the first time we really saw him utilized wide. So, I mean, like, they have been trying to throw him passes, but I think that they had a early game plan to get him the ball in the flat that didn't quite manifest until later on in the game. I'm not sure if it was second half or late first half that he had his touchdown. I think it was late first half, where we saw him, putting him in spots where he's not necessarily in space, but going up against lighter groups. So this is a team that absolutely stacks the box. So you have him running into groups of 9 guys. This was always going to be a little bit difficult there. But then we saw wide runs in this game where he had to run wide right for 9 yards. He had to run wide right for 18 yards.
Somebody.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that they're learning different ways to utilize him to his advantage and getting him in situations. So like when you get a stacked box, yeah, you're going to keep running him up the middle, but you might be able to find ways. Maybe that's a late game thing when they're tired.
My chat was not a fart by any stretch from anybody. It's just kind of like, this is what needs to be.
But I think they're still learning all the things that he can do and do well. Yep. And the offensive line played amazing in this game. This is a really good pass rush. I love Vance Joseph. I like what he does. We could sit here and talk about like Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper as the sack leaders, and they're certainly like kind of the stud names, but they have a lot of pretty good guys, and they work together in a very solidified, strong defense that gets the most out of everybody. And this was not going to be an easy battle, and for 3 quarters it was more than easy. I mean, like they were I shouldn't say that. We didn't score on the first drive.
We were winning battles. We were winning more battles than losing.
Yeah, for sure. I think let's flip to the other side of the ball. I think that the Giants defense for 3 quarters, when they were playing aggressive, Bo Nix looked awful in this game. Absolutely terrible.
Grump, just between me and you, Bo Nix isn't very good.
It's funny because Broncos fans were saying things, in the comments section of Giants Nation show. Things like, just admit that you've never watched Bo Nix play. It's like, dude, I watched Bo Nix at more than one college. I saw him in my own eyes in Senior Bowl. Like, Don't tell me I haven't seen him. I think maybe you haven't seen him. I think you've watched him for a lot less than me.
Coach probably gets in their perception anyway, so don't care about Bronco fans say.
Yeah, and I mean, like, he's not. I'm not saying he's terrible as a quarterback. I think that he has the ability to throw the ball. There's a reason Sean Payton liked him. But there are things that he just doesn't do very well, and he ended this game 27 of 50.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And
aided by a defense that gave him chunks of yards.
Yeah. So I mean, you had a defense that in the biggest moments started just going completely soft, and we'll get to Shambo in just a second. But it's really important to note, it's all happened the moment that Paulson Adebo got hurt, and that's not just me saying it. That's me rewatching it and being like, why did he complete that? Oh, that's when Deonte Banks came in for Paulson Adebo. That's literally where all the pass completions come from. All the chain moving happens, not necessarily always targeting Deonte Banks, but on every single drive, he gave up a play either in the run game by not keeping his contain or in the pass game. So it speaks to how bad Deonte Banks really is and how much of a weak link he is. Now, before we get into all that, really important positive conversation to pretty much, I don't want to say end the positive conversation, but I think it's time we have the conversation about Cordell Flott. Cordell Flott, they thought that like this was their game plan. When push comes to shove and we need the ball downfield, aim for 28. Because that's what they did, and it didn't work. He gave up 2 catches on 10 targets. He was targeted 10 times. The 2 catches he gave up, one of them that's credited to him was kind of like an off switch coverage. So he's playing super far off and it's zone, and like it all depends on the route combination. Guy cuts in, so he's got to jump in and take that. So there's so much cushion there that, it is what it is. And the other catch was a sideline, really good catch late in the game. Sideline right by the goal line. I think it was Cortland Sutton that had it, and it was a great throw, great catch. He was in good position.
Undefensible.
Yeah. In this, instead, you had 2 incredible pass breakups. And there were just some where he was just throwing his direction. This guy was just not open at all. He just ended up having to overthrow him because Cordell Flott just played an outstanding game. He also had a remarkable tackle on like a wide receiver screen pass early on in the game. He just slipped right by the block and just took him out 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. In fact, I don't even blame Bo Nix so much. Their offense just seemed really bitchy. It was a lot of throws behind the line of scrimmage and like just kind of getting playmakers in space, which I
seemed flat for 3 quarters.
Yeah, it just, but not even just flat. It was just like it wasn't. They weren't pushing the ball down the field or being aggressive.
Well,
it's just like this,
never mind on the field. Even like the play calling was flat. It looked like a team just kind of almost like an early preseason kind of offense. Like we're just going to run base plays.
It did. And for all the. We can get into the shitting all over Shane Bowen now, but important to note that guys like Deonte Banks did not step up to the challenge when they had to jump in the game. Drew Phillips, when money was on the line, he gave up a huge pass deep, and then another one. I guess kind of I'll blame him at least 50%, but that was when they had dropped back into this super soft shell coverage and they just gave up like a 30-40 yard pass down the middle of the field, and you look at it and it's like he's not the only one playing that far off. So I mean, they targeted him, sure, but they could have thrown to 3 other guys and probably gotten the same completion. So
Grump, to me it's very simple. What is the best unit on this team?
Without a doubt, it's either the offensive line or the pass rush, and it's probably the pass rush.
It's the pass rush. And when you effectively scheme away your pass rush late in games and pretty much making your best unit on your team ineffective and useless, you're just begging to lose. I guess I understand the fear on the backside. You're playing guys that probably shouldn't even be on the team anymore, but the best way to neutralize that is to keep bringing the funk and keep bringing the fear on the quarterback. How many times did we have a 3-man rush in the fourth quarter and just letting Nix sit back and pick it apart? You can't help quarterbacks when there's obvious problems in the back in the back end, and it's just it's one of the biggest cliches in football. The prevent defense prevents you from winning, and I just don't understand it. And I was speechless watching it, but it's just like they're making plays, but we were giving them, how far back were corners even off the line of scrimmage? Everybody's so far. Nobody's even making a whiff of an attempt to go after the quarterback. There's nothing worse than football and being a fan and seeing it happen in front of you. There's nothing you can do about it because it's happening.
Real quick. It was the 1997 season. It was the first year under Jim Fossil. They lost the Vikings 23-22. Yeah, they did exactly what they did in the end of the Dallas Cowboy game. They just went back to being as conservative as possible. I think there were only 2 kind of off-ish plays where they did something else. They brought a 5th rusher on one play. And then on another play, they didn't bring 5, but they dropped like Brian Burns into coverage, and they brought the 4th guy, was like Drew Phillips or something like that, coming in on a nickel, or maybe it was a linebacker like Darius Musa. I forget. But
something, Grump? You said this play and this play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Play. They just stopped playing defense.
Plays they have in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. They stopped playing defense and they started just playing prevent. Make them make mistakes, kind of thing. But I'm not a believer on offense or defense of playing conservative and safe. Now, I understand in some scenarios on offense, when you get lucky, you get fluky, you want to start controlling the clock a little bit, is different than doing what you do to get there, right? Like if your defense is creating turnovers, forcing pressures, forcing quarterbacks out of the pocket and forcing throwaways, if that's what's making this work for you, then keep doing it. Don't change, and you live and die by it, right? Like, do people go back and blame Bill Belichick for running a cover 0 in the Super Bowl that allows Plaxico Burress to be one-on-one versus Ellis Hobbs or whoever the hell he was up against. I think it was Ellis Hobbs. I don't think people even know that fucking happened.
No.
But
No.
Bill Belichick ran his defense. And in that moment and on that day, Eli Manning was just better.
Mm-hmm.
Prove
Let
to me that
players
Bo
play.
Nix is that player. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do what you're doing. Get those guys to be in. And again, I am going to blame Shane Bowen for folding. Right? Just folded like a, I don't know, folding chair, deck of cards. What do you fold?
Cheap suit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't deny that there were also just like a plethora of things going wrong. You had, I think, 2 safeties had went down by the end of the
There's
game.
a mass unit out there.
Yeah, so you had Javon Holland went down. I'm pretty sure Tyler Nubin went down and then maybe was coming back in some hurt capacity. Like I said, Paulson Adebo went down. You had Deontay Banks in there. All of these things were contributing factors.
I don't want to use excuses either, but you're playing in the 50th minute of a game in altitude, and these guys are not used to it. And I was out there last week, ended up in the hospital. Altitude's a thing.
I think the bigger point is that they're. It's easy to say the kicker cost them the game or Shane Bowen cost them the game. There's a multitude of reasons they lost this game, and it's funny to say that, but it takes a village, man, to lose a 33-point lead or whatever it was.
The bigger problem is not one particular play that they lost. It was they put themselves in a position to lose.
Yes,
they're up 19 points, fourth quarter.
Yeah, and
a lot of things happen. Some things I'll grant you were just the football gods, but most of it was preventable.
Yeah. And it gets down to this too, right? In 4 years, and we sort of hinted at it at the beginning, they have not done on the roster building end of this. They have not been as scrutinizing of the 53rd man on this roster, and I would say even like the 60th man on this roster when you factor in the practice squad and. That first year when they went out and they last minute signed Fabian Moreau, a below average but veteran corner, they shouldn't have had to put him in as a starter. But if they had something like that now on a vet minimum contract, I would be running to go find the nearest phone to call Fabian Moreau to be the backup instead of Deontay Banks. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You have safeties back there.
I'd rather have call Banks right now than Deontay Banks, to be very honest.
You had safety like Bo Braid had to play safety snaps. There's a practice squad guy who's been 99% special teams his entire career, has to get meaningful safety snaps in a competitive game that you were down to the wire in.
Jordan Humphreys in there. These guys that are just
absolutely. I mean,
squad guys.
Jalen Hyatt even being like, Bo Collins, and again, like there's nothing. Bo Collins did everything he could to win that roster spot, whatever. But he should be.
The bar's too low.
Way
These
too
guys
low.
Can win the roster spot.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
And we're in year 4.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that first year they churned the bottom of that, and they found the best bottom of the roster guys you could get, and that was what honestly gave me hope. It wasn't the drafting. He came out of Buffalo. I was like, I don't know, man. Brandon Beane drafts running backs every year, and they're not all good, and that just seems like a waste to me. Like, they prioritized Gregory Rousseau, who I thought was like pretty good but not great, and thought there were better options. Like I didn't 100% agree with their draft plan, but when he came in here and the way he, scrutinized every last roster spot and found all these really cheap veterans, bringing in a guy like Isaiah Hodgins, who was a absolute difference maker at a turning point in the season where they could do nothing but run out of 12 and 13 personnel because that's all they had. They bring in a guy like Isaiah Hodgins who allows them to run a real offense, and not only that, shows up in big moments. He's not worth much more than the contract that they gave him, which was nothing.
Talking about executing a real offense, just showing a real offense changes how defenses look at you.
Absolutely.
I just want a thing where I want to see Scotty win fourth quarters, take over games. Well, it's a lot easier when you have a receiver you could potentially throw 15 yards down the field. Like That wasn't there. That was part of the perfect storm for yesterday. But again, if the bar is that low, where we got guys like Lil Jordan Humphrey and stuff out there, no defense is going to fear that. You can creep up and make it harder for guys like Scotty to do their thing in clutch spots.
Now, I mean, I think the kind of bringing this full circle towards the end of this episode here a little bit is
Yeah.
the key differences. We started this off saying that this was sort of the Matt Dodge game. Here's the key difference. Number one, you have a proven quarterback in Eli Manning, right? Okay. I feel good about Jackson Dart, but I felt better about Eli Manning at that time. Number two, Tom Coughlin had already had Super Bowl credibility, right? And I think that those are probably the two big, and also like that team was playoff bound at that point. They were losing that game put their playoff hopes then in jeopardy, where they had to win out, and that, if I remember right, they had to win out, and I think other teams had to fuck up, and that losing that game put them in that spot. And they, this team, I have no delusions about that. I had no delusions about that coming into this. So, where the franchises are in a different spot. So, the reason I'm not flipping the table over in frustration and anger like I probably would have if we had a podcast in 2010 is, one, I'm not 15 years younger. You know what I mean? That's for starters.
That's for obvious sake. Look at this.
Yeah. I mean, both in terms of energy level, frustration, but I think also maturity, right? Like, I've been around. I've seen the dredges of things. I've seen better. I've seen worse. I've seen highs. I've seen lows.
Been beaten down for the last decade too.
Yeah, but I mean, I think also I'm seeing possibly another peak and valley, right? Like, I do see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. Big picture, big wide lens, super wide IMAX theater lens. But
I have two lights at the end of the tunnel that I think the core, especially of Jackson Dart, Scottaboo to a lesser extent, but the bigger part is we may have our quarterback. But I also think that we are not going to see Brian Daboll and that staff next year.
Yeah.
I thought there would be more rope given to, okay, you drafted your quarterback, you have your chance to develop, blah, 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 blah. But these aren't just losses. This is a loss which was the second story on Good Morning America. So every house brow in the world, who doesn't know the first thing on football heard, is 33 points in the fourth quarter a lot? Yeah. These are high profile losses and fuck ups that, for a fan base that's very ornery, can push it over the edge. I mean, I'm not going to do my weekly Florida comparison, but I was at a game Saturday night in Gainesville where the Gators won a homecoming game and 90,000 people were chanting to fire the coach. And guess what? 24 hours later, he was gone. That I don't know what public opinion it means something. It doesn't mean everything, but he's digging himself such a hole that I don't know how he recovers from it.
Well, okay.
Because the fundamental things that are tipping this don't seem like they're changing and are ever going to change.
No, so here's I'm going to walk away from the Florida thing entirely because he was a dead man walking into that game, and you know it. So that's number one. Still. So the public outcry has nothing to do with it. But here's the thing. Brian Daboll has done nothing to re-win his job. Brian Daboll's best thing here has been advocating for a player who has done his part in stepping up to the plate. That's the best thing. Everything else that Brian Daboll has done this year has been the same old of he is not an elevating head coach. He has not taken the summer seriously on the players. We are seeing players come in a little bit flat. And I'm not going to blame him for starting Russell Wilson over Jackson Dart or anything like that. But players came in a little bit flat.
Again,
he selected Shane Bowen. That was his decision. Probably at least a little bit, if we're to believe Hard Knocks. He's partially responsible for that. Shane Bowen has been a flat disaster. His time management has not gotten better. You have the medical tent kind of fiasco. There, he's now costing John Mara 6 figures probably. I don't believe we have an official punishment on that yet. But it's massive negative headlines, not just for the team, but for the league. You know what I mean? For people who don't care about football and think it's a brutal sport that should be outlawed, and they don't want their kids playing it. They don't think any child should play it or whatever.
Like an out of control little league coach or
He
little league dad.
absolutely does. Who's circumnavigating? Like, see how easy it is to just skirt the rules and they just let it go. You know what I mean? Like, he's
a guy who provides no discipline for his players. So why does he feel discipline will be instilled upon himself to do anything?
It feeds right into the same thing we heard a couple years ago about Joe Shane having to listen in on the monitors because he's yelling at the coaches. You know what I mean? And you have defensive coordinator quit on you in a really unprofessional fashion. So I mean, like, Brian Daboll has not done anything really to separate himself. I don't think. I think the best thing really that he's done that I don't think has blown up in their face was bringing Carmen Brasillo for the offensive line, maybe. I mean, and advocating for Jackson Dart is not nothing.
And also, we don't know what will happen even the rest of the year with Jackson Dart, never mind his career, but he was able to take a quarterback who the original plan was to slowly prepare. At some point, he'll get in and eventually starting before October 1st and giving this team the best chance to win. He's not really playing as a placeholder. He's playing as someone who can help them win. He gets a huge feather in the cap.
Yeah.
But, at some point is the juice worth the squeeze. Well, and there's a lot of squeezing right now, and there's a lot of pulp that hurts.
The thing is that if it were clear in a way that Brian Daboll was a terrible, awful, worst head coach of all time, he wouldn't have been here this long, right? So, like, there's plenty of positives that he does in terms of scheming an offense around his quarterbacks and stuff like that. So, like, don't think that I'm sitting here saying he's the worst head coach I've ever seen. He's not even the worst Giants head coach I've seen.
No, so correct. I saw Ray Hanley.
I mean, I think there's other. I think Ben McAdoo was worse.
Ray Hanley was worse.
I'm just saying. Like, I think there's a list below Brian Daboll without question.
I think we're really sensing, though, with this guy, there is going to be a ceiling of what this team can do.
But I think the thing is
fighting with themselves is not literally fighting with themselves, but they are pissing against a win with this coaching staff.
But I think outside of that, for Brian Daboll specifically, there were things that he's not good at that he has refused to show that he's gotten better at. Time management, the way he deals with players, the way he allows mistakes to go accounted for, I guess, or
those cost games.
No accountability. Yeah, I truly believe what you said early on is with what he doesn't do right now doesn't cost us anything because the team is bad and the team is not in critical situations. But when they do get to be critical situations, like, what's to say that Joe Shane's not a great GM, but they keep Brian Daboll and they bring in a perfect GM and he builds this perfect team. Games are won on the margins, and he offers no competitive advantage.
And even
at
a
game
playoff
time.
Run, the playoffs in his first year, that Minnesota game was never really a game, and the Philly game was never really a game. So the coaching aspect of it was minimized because they were kind of lopsided both ways.
Yeah, in some regards, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So It's not like Brian Daboll is the worst head coach of all time and absolutely needs to be fired. I think it is difficult to say that right away, but I think when you look at the things that he clearly isn't good at, he has not gotten better at, you just know
I think they're deal breakers. You're right. There's a difference between I don't think you should move on with this guy and him being a terrible coach. Mm-hmm. I think Daboll will get another job somewhere. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty convinced he will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think he'll probably even move down and be an excellent offensive coordinator somewhere where he doesn't have to do game management things and he doesn't have to dole out all of the discipline for every player and he doesn't have to give a shit about who the defensive coordinator is and what that scheme is. He doesn't have to give a shit about the kicker situation, and he can just focus on the things that he cares about and the things that he's good at. And I'm sure he'll be excellent at that somewhere. And maybe
there's 100 examples of that. Look at guys like Matt Patricia. Look at guys like Norv Turner. There are a million of them that. You rise until you beyond your skis and you fall back to what you do best.
Yeah. Or maybe this was his first head coaching experience and he'll walk away with this and reflect on it and be like, you know what? That whole
Yeah.
time there, I really should have been harder on the players. I can't be the nice guy. Because the other thing, too, is that it is definitely easier to be the hard ass that lightens up than it is to be the cool guy who has to then crack the belt, right?
Oh, it's impossible that way. It
Yeah.
really is.
So he might have made a decision early on that doomed him that he was never able to come back from. And maybe he learns that lesson and maybe his next head coaching gig, he's not the jolly fat guy with a beard. He's the fucking old grouch bald guy who is just no nonsense. And maybe that's where his success comes from. I don't know.
Hey, I mean, we've seen it before. Guys that have failed miserably in round one of head coaching, we come back. Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick. These guys that failed miserably their first time.
Sure. Um so we're at an hour right now. The reason I had no problem doing this is because I felt that it needed to be talked about, and that there were plenty of positives to talk about in this game, because they have, as you said, they've been outplaying what they are.
Yeah.
I thought that they would come into this game and be competitive, and it would be a tough game. I did not think that they would put up over 30 points. I did not think that they would be just having Broncos fans and writers in a tizzy for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
I also didn't think they would blow something like that. But at the same time, I think it's important that in the context of this year, I had what I think are realistic expectations for this roster and what I think are realistic expectations for a rookie quarterback that is not this generational first overall talent. This was a guy that traded up to get in the 20s. You know what I mean?
And let's even go for even for this game specifically. We were talking about your expectation going to the season with this roster. This roster right now on October 20th is not the roster we expect going to the season. You're missing one of the three best players on the team.
Absolutely.
You're missing,
Absolutely.
your second best receiver. You're missing guys in the secondary all over the place. You're missing, he's better than, but it's not the same quarterback that started this season.
Mhm.
This,
But I mean, the important thing is that he didn't have a whole summer of being like, well, you're the guy and you take all the first team reps and whatever, right?
right.
So he's had to move in earlier than probably even he expected. So
Yep.
and and for what it's worth, he's having a really, really good start to his career. So I mean, for me, where the light at the end of the tunnel sort of is that I think that there are plenty of positives for what's been built over this time. That doesn't mean you need to hold on to Joe Shane. It doesn't mean that you need to hold on to this coaching staff. I think that slowly they've built a good roster that they can continue to build on, whether it's them or new people coming in. And I'm feeling far more hopeful about this than I ever was during the Daniel Jones era.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is almost 100% of this podcast. So that's certainly saying something.
Of the injured Daniel Jones era. Let's put that.
Yeah.
Remember, he has a new legal name.
Yeah. And with the Eagles coming up on the roster, on the schedule, I didn't really feel like there was a ton of time needed to go over prep for that, but we'll also have to see the injuries that come out of this and who plays and who doesn't play. But after this game and what they showed, I think that this team can stand toe to toe with almost every single team in the league. And I think that teams that they probably have no business competing with are the Buffalo Bills, maybe the Green Bay Packers, maybe.
You can say that about 20 teams too. I mean, those are the elite teams. So don't take that as like
No.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone could take that negatively. Like, is there?
Right.
Who am I missing that they just have no business competing against, and like I'm not even giving them a shot? I feel helpless now after what we've seen against the Eagles, against the Chargers, and against the Denver Broncos. Like, But they already did kind of play the Chiefs without Jackson Dart, and I kind of felt like they left that one out on the field a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the shit show we were afraid it could have been, too. Right. So, no, I mean, the fundamentals are there. The base is there to compete. They don't have a good enough roster, and I don't think a good enough coaching staff
Nope.
to outkick your coverage to win games. That's obviously the big and most important step, but to compete in them, sure.
I think that the Broncos might be the last team that looked at the Giants on their schedule and went like, "That's a win." I think that era is done. I think that well, era. I don't know about that, but I don't think that that's happening again this year.
Season.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening this season for anybody else.
I'll tell you
forward.
one team that certainly won't be feeling that is the Eagles, because they're going to be pissed.
Yeah,
and they had a get right game last week at Minnesota. So
I watched some of that game, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I only saw the second half of that game. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I was kind of flipping around. I was watching the New England game, was like my primary 1:00 thing, and then I was like, well, this is sort of becoming a blow. I'm not really interested in this anymore. So I put the 4-screen thing on, and I had the Jets Panthers game on that I was kind of sort of watching because I was like, wow, this is something. And I had seen the first half highlights of how bad Carson Wentz for the Vikings was playing. And I was like in shock at how close that Eagles-Vikings game was. It really, like, for the highlights that I saw, and I didn't really commit to memory, and I wasn't listening to the commentary over it, I was like, oh my God, did he throw backwards? Like, the hell was that? Let me just put up the box score. Is that gonna? Okay, give me 2 seconds. I just want to look at Vikings Eagles 2025.
I meant it in the roughest sense of, it was they needed to right the ship with a win, and they did it. Tough environment, decent team.
Yeah.
So not that, all of a sudden all is right in Eagle Land or anything, but they needed that win.
What I must have seen was in the second quarter, back-to-back drives with interceptions by Carson Wentz. One was a pick six.
Yeah.
And then the next drive, another interception deep right to Jordan Addison, which was picked off. Eagles ended up punting that one. So, I mean, at the half, it was 14-6, but after that, it just looked like, well, Vikings are terrible. Carson Wentz is terrible. And that game ended with a 6-point victory. It was 28-22.
Yeah.
That is really not blowing anybody out. So, you're not wrong. Get right game, probably for sure. You kind of forget the messy victories and just, be like, yeah, there's a W on the schedule there. I feel a little bit better. It's like you just get the shaky one out of the way.
Their system really fast, and they did
100%. But the Eagles, I don't think anybody is taking the Giants like too lightly going forward.
Like, we got the Raiders or the Jets. Like, they're not in that category at all.
Yeah.
No way.
Thank God. although we had a back page level moment there, the Jets are the forever hold my beer team.
Oh yeah, I had the pleasure of watching that Jet game on the flight home Sunday, and rough.
Yeah,
I'll tell you how bad it is, Grump. I flew into Newark. So
Tyrod Taylor finally played. They pulled.
What's that?
They pulled Justin Fields and put Taylor in.
Yeah. But this is how bad it is in the apathy. So I landed Newark Airport about 3:40. I take the train back into the city. So I guess it's a caucus 4:20. Now, at 1:00 game, Giant game, Secaucus is filled with people trying to get home. My train stops at Secaucus. Not one person gets on it. I thought it was like a COVID game or something, that they're so apathetic that they didn't even show up, or they left at 3:00 or something because nobody got on the train.
I don't know.
That franchise is a mess.
I have coworkers and friends that they have new families. You know what I mean? Young kids, whatever. Like they have. I made the joke earlier about like choosing apple picking and stuff like that. Like they have resigned to having family time on Sundays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're done. They don't like Aaron Glenn. It's a mess. This is the worst they've ever seen, and it is crazy because it's not a bad roster.
And not only that, they've been burnt with false promises so long. There's no, well, the next regime will come in, they'll make things better. It's just like, it's just gonna be same old, same old.
Mm-hmm. I did see a video. I don't know. A Jets fan in the parking lot lighting shit on fire and whatever. But I mean, I feel like that could be insert a year, right?
Yeah. Just remember, right. Fire Marshal Ted, whatever the fuck his name was, swore off the Jets, and then like a year later was back in the stands. So.
Yeah, no, he was still gonna keep going, but he wouldn't be the fire marshal guy anymore. But then he just kept wearing the hat anyway. So I don't know how much deeper he went into the persona. Maybe he had a different voice and he like doing some method acting.
Giant fan. The moral of the story is it can be worse.
Oh, it's always worse when you're wearing green. That's going to do it for this one. Giants will be playing against Mean Green Eagles in Philadelphia next week, so that'll be another different test for Jackson Dart playing in Lincoln
Financial. Let me
Financial.
get my prediction. A mucky loss, but I think we play well.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure on prediction yet because I got to see. I really have to see what the nature of the injuries on defense were, because if we're stuck, if Paulson and Debo really can't play and they're stuck with Deonte Banks, there's no way I'm picking a win. It's just I'm not doing it. Yeah. But if Paulson and Debo plays, if everybody is just like, yeah, it was a mid-game hamstring thing, he's okay now. If Darius Slayton can come back and be some kind of presence on the outside, it'll absolutely change my feeling on this one. But I've said it, and I think that this team can go toe-to-toe with just about any other team in the league right now.
I think the key is just pressure on Hurts and don't give him time to – at some point, they're going to start clicking him in the wide receivers. It hasn't happened yet, but at some point it's going to. And, the strength of this team, again, is the pass rush, and they got to cause havoc. They got to get him off balance and don't give him time to find open guys, because if we're playing with that mash unit back there will be open guys.
Oh, yeah.
So it really, the key to this game is up front.
Yeah.
And be aggressive. And don't be afraid, be over aggressive and somebody's one-on-one. I mean, it's gonna happen probably, but the norm has to be him out of balance, not occasionally.
Yeah.
It's their only shot.
Keep him guessing post snap and make him rush decisions with a varied approach to your pass rush, right? Stunts and twists if you're rushing 4, dropping unpredictable guys into coverage and bringing pressure from other directions, and from time to time bringing 5 or even 6 guys.
I think we have a better chance to win if Barkley has more rushing yards than,
Jalen Hurts.
Or I should say like Vontae Smith or something just gets loose and has 160 yards receiving.
Oh, yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.